The smell of burned toast still hung in the air when my 9-year-old daughter handed me the piece of paper that would change everything. I remember that moment with painful clarity. The way the morning light filtered through the small basement window, casting long shadows across the laminate countertop where I'd been flipping pancakes. The way Grace's pajama top had a small stain from the juice box she'd had the night before. The way her voice trembled just slightly when she said, "Mom, I found this on the counter." I wiped my hands on the dish towel, not yet knowing that I was about to wipe away the last remaining fragments of the relationship I'd had with my parents for 34 years. The paper was white, standard printer paper, folded once. I opened it. I read it. And in that moment, standing in my parents' basement apartment on December 22nd, with Christmas 3 days away and my daughter watching my face for signs of whether her world was about to shatter, I felt something inside me go cold and hard and absolutely certain. My parents had left for my sister Bella's house that morning. They'd be gone for 6 days, and they expected Grace and me to be gone by the time they got back. No conversation, no warning. Just a note on the counter, and 6 days to somehow find a new place to live during the hardest week of the year to find housing. This is the story of how I gave them exactly what they wanted, and why they'll never forgive themselves for asking. Before I tell you this story, I need you to understand something. Every family has its fractures, its fault lines, its silent resentments that build over years until something finally breaks. But what my parents did that Christmas week, and what I did in response, that was something else entirely. That was a choice. A deliberate, calculated decision to prioritize one child over another, to send a message that could never be unsaid, to draw a line in the sand that would end up dividing our family forever. If you've ever been made to feel like the lesser option in your own family, if you've ever watched parents choose favorites and pretend they weren't, if you've ever had to explain to a child why the people who are supposed to love them unconditionally, then this story is for you. Hit that like button if you've ever had to fight for your place in a family that made you fight for it. Subscribe if you believe that sometimes the healthiest thing you can do is walk away. And settle in, because this is a long one. This is the whole story, from that first moment of crushing realization to the phone call 7 months later that proved I'd made the right choice. This is what happens when you push someone too far, and they finally decide to stop pushing back. Let me tell you how we got to that morning. Let me tell you about the 8 months that led up to a note on a counter and a 9-year-old girl asking her mother why they had to leave. Because context matters. Because the story doesn't begin with an eviction, it begins with a phone call 8 months earlier, when I finally admitted that I couldn't do it anymore. I'd been working in marketing for a small firm downtown, good job, decent pay, the kind of position you're supposed to be grateful for in your early 30s. But the company had been struggling for months, quietly, the way small companies struggle when they're trying not to alarm their employees. I'd noticed the signs, the delayed vendor payments, the frozen positions that were supposed to be filled, the way my boss started avoiding eye contact during weekly meetings. When the layoff came, it wasn't a surprise. What was a surprise was how long it took to find something else. I had savings, not much, but enough for 3 months, I thought. 3 months became 4. 4 became 5. I applied for everything: positions in my field, positions slightly outside my field, positions I was overqualified for, positions I was underqualified for. I rewrote my resume 11 times. I had 17 interviews. None of them led anywhere. Grace's father had been out of the picture since she was 2, not dead, just gone. The kind of gone where child support payments arrive sporadically and birthday cards don't arrive at all. He'd moved to Oregon with a woman he'd met online, and I'd long since stopped expecting anything from him. So when the money ran out, when I couldn't make rent on our small apartment anymore, when I sat down at my kitchen table at 2 in the morning with a glass of wine and a bank statement that made me feel like I'd failed at everything, I called my parents. I remember that conversation with painful clarity, too. My mother's voice on the other end of the line, surprised to hear from me so late, the careful way I explained that I needed help, the silence that followed. Then my father's voice, practical, businesslike. "We have the basement apartment. It's empty since your uncle moved out. You and Grace can stay there until you get back on your feet." It was supposed to be temporary. That's what everyone said. Temporary. A few months. Until I found work. The basement apartment was small, one bedroom, one bathroom, a tiny kitchenette with a two-burner stove and an apartment-sized fridge. But it had its own entrance, a separate door on the side of the house that meant we could come and go without walking through my parents' space. There was a small living area where Grace could do her homework and watch TV. A window in the bedroom that looked out onto the backyard garden my mother had cultivated for 30 years. It wasn't much, but it was clean and dry, and most importantly, it was somewhere to go when I had nowhere else. I tried to make it feel like home. I hung curtains that Grace picked out bright blue with white stars that she said made the room feel like sleeping under the sky. I put up pictures of her artwork on the refrigerator. I bought a small Christmas tree on clearance in July, thinking ahead to December, thinking that surely by then we'd be in our own place again, that this was just a brief detour in what would otherwise be an unremarkable year. I was wrong about that too. I paid my parents' rent, $600 a month, which was less than half what I'd been paying for our apartment, but it was what I could afford between freelance projects and unemployment and the occasional child support payment that actually arrived. My parents seemed fine with the arrangement. They were retired, both of them, my father from the post office and my mother from a long career as an elementary school teacher. They had their routines, their garden, their book club, their morning coffee on the screened-in porch. Grace and I had our routines too: school drop-offs and pickups, homework at the small dining table I'd found at a thrift store, movie nights on the old couch that had come with the apartment. We were grateful, genuinely grateful for the help. I made sure Grace said thank you whenever my parents did something for us. I made sure we weren't underfoot. I made sure the apartment was clean, that we didn't make noise late at night, that we respected their space as much as they respected ours. For the first few months, everything seemed fine. My mother would occasionally stop by with leftovers from dinner, and my father would help me with small repairs around the apartment. They'd play with Grace in the backyard on sunny afternoons, pushing her on the old swing set that had been mine when I was her age. It felt like family. It felt like the kind of support system you're supposed to have when everything falls apart. Then Bella came back into the picture. I need to tell you about Bella. My older sister, 2 years my senior, the one who'd always known exactly what she wanted and exactly how to get it. While I'd stumbled through my 20s wrong major, wrong jobs, wrong relationships, Bella had glided. She'd married right out of college, a man named Derek who worked in finance and came from a family with money. They'd moved to Connecticut, to a town with good schools and historic homes and neighbors who played tennis on weekends. She'd had 2 children in quick succession, first a boy, then a girl, and became the kind of mother who made it look effortless. Her Christmas cards were legendary in our family, these carefully curated glimpses into a life that seemed charmed. Professional photos of the 4 of them in matching sweaters, updates about Derek's promotion and the kids' achievements and the European vacation they'd taken over the summer. I'd never been invited on that vacation. I'd never been invited to most of Bella's events, actually. There was always a reason. The house was too small. The timing was wrong. It was really just for their close friends. But my parents were always invited. They'd fly out for long weekends, attend birthday parties and school recitals, send me photos afterward with captions like, "Wish you could have been there." I never pointed out that I hadn't been invited. It seemed easier not to. When Bella announced, in early December, that she wanted to host my parents for Christmas, a whole week in her beautiful home with her beautiful family, my mother called to tell me about it with what I can only describe as breathless excitement. "Oh, honey, Bella really wants us to come stay for Christmas," she said. "It'll be so nice to spend time with her and the kids. You understand, don't you?" I was sitting on the edge of Grace's bed, helping her with a math worksheet when I took the call. I remember the way Grace looked up at me, pencil hovering over a subtraction problem, waiting for my reaction. "Of course I understand," I said, because what else do you say? "That sounds wonderful for you." "It's just that Derek's parents are coming too, and there's not really room for everyone," my mother continued, and I could hear the justification in her voice, the careful way she was explaining why Grace and I hadn't been included. And Bella thought it would be a good opportunity for us to have some quality time with her family. "I said I understand," I repeated. "Have a great time." After I hung up, Grace looked at me with those big eyes that see more than they let on. "Are we having Christmas here?" she asked. "Just us," I said, and I made my voice sound cheerful, excited even. "We'll have our own Christmas. We'll make cookies and watch movies and open presents in our pajamas. It'll be special." Grace seemed satisfied with that answer. She went back to her math worksheet, tongue poking out in concentration as she worked through the subtraction problems. I sat there for a moment longer, looking at my daughter in the small bedroom of my parents' basement apartment, thinking about Christmas cards I'd never be featured in, and family photos I'd never be included in, and a sister who'd made it very clear, over and over again, that I wasn't really part of her perfect life. Then I got up and started making dinner, because that's what you do. You keep going. My parents left for Bella's house on the morning of December 22nd. I heard them moving around upstairs, footsteps on the floor above our heads, the sound of suitcases being wheeled to the car, my father's voice calling out, "We're off." Through the door that connected our spaces, I called back, "Have a safe trip." And Grace waved from where she sat eating breakfast at our small table. I didn't go up to say goodbye in person. I don't know why. Maybe some part of me already knew. Maybe some part of me had been bracing for something, even though I couldn't have said what. The day passed normally. I made breakfast for Grace, helped her get dressed, walked her to the bus stop for the last day of school before winter break. I came back to the apartment and spent the morning applying for jobs and following up on freelance leads. I picked Grace up at noon half-day, the start of vacation, and we spent the afternoon making paper snowflakes to tape to our windows. It was a good day, a normal day. The kind of day where nothing particularly bad happens, so you don't expect anything bad to happen. Grace was the one who found the note. She came downstairs the next morning, Saturday, December 23rd, holding a piece of paper in her small hands. She was still in her pajamas, her hair messy from sleep, and her face had that careful expression children get when they're trying to figure out if something is bad news before they hand it over. "Mom," she said quietly, "I found this on the counter." The counter upstairs, she meant. In my parents' kitchen, where she'd gone looking for a snack. I took the paper. I recognized my mother's handwriting immediately, the neat, controlled loops I'd known my entire life, the same handwriting that had written notes in my lunchbox and signed permission slips and addressed birthday cards. The message was short. "Jessica, we've decided it's time for you and Grace to find your own place. Please be moved out by the time we return from Bella's on the 28th. We'll discuss details when we're back, Mom and Dad." I read it twice, then a third time. The words didn't change. Grace was watching my face, scanning for clues about whether her world was about to end. "What does it mean?" she asked. I looked at the date on the wall calendar above our kitchenette, December 23rd. My parents had left yesterday. They'd be back on the 28th. 6 days. They wanted us out in 6 days, on Christmas week. "It means we need to find a new place to live," I said. I kept my voice steady, calm, the way you do when your child is watching and you can't let them see how hard you've just been hit. Grace's eyes went wide. "Why?" "I don't know yet," I said, "but we'll figure it out." I folded the note in half, then in half again, and set it on the counter. Grace was still standing there, her small body rigid with the effort of not crying. "Are we in trouble?" she asked. "No, sweetheart," I said. "We're not in trouble." "Then why do we have to leave?" I didn't have a good answer, so I said the only thing I could think of. "Sometimes grown-ups make decisions that don't make sense to anyone but them. This is one of those times." I spent that day making phone calls. I called every apartment complex in town, every property management company, every listing I could find on Craigslist and Facebook Marketplace and the local classifieds. With my freelance income and unemployment benefits, I could afford maybe $900 a month. Maybe. The cheapest place I found was $1,100, and it wasn't available until January 15th. Most places were more, much more. And almost nothing was available immediately, especially not during Christmas week when no one was moving and no one was showing apartments and everything was closed until after the new year. I called my parents, both of them. Neither answered. Of course they didn't. They were at Bella's house, celebrating with her perfect family, and I was back in their basement trying to figure out how to not be homeless in 6 days. I left voicemails. Calm, polite voicemails because I couldn't let Bella hear me losing my mind on the other end of the line. "Hi, Mom, I got your note. Can we talk about this? I need more time. Please call me back." "Dad, it's Jessica. I don't understand what's happening. Please call me." They didn't call back. Not that day. Not the next. Christmas Eve came and went. Grace and I were alone in the basement apartment. I'd put up a small tree, the one I'd bought on clearance in July when I'd still thought we'd be out by then, and I'd wrapped the few presents I could afford, books from the used bookstore, a new coloring set, a stuffed animal I'd found at a thrift store and washed carefully. I tried to make it feel festive. I tried to make it feel like a real Christmas. Grace helped me make cookies from a mix I found in the back of the pantry. We watched movies on my laptop, Elf, and The Polar Express, and the old animated How the Grinch Stole Christmas. She fell asleep on the couch next to me halfway through the third movie, her head heavy on my arm, her breathing slow and even. I looked at her sleeping face. I looked at the small Christmas tree with its single string of lights. I looked at the note I'd left on the counter, still folded, still containing the same message it had contained 2 days ago. And I felt something harden in my chest. Not anger exactly, something colder than anger, something more certain. Clarity, maybe. The clarity that comes when you realize exactly where you stand with people. My parents had left a note on Christmas week telling their daughter and granddaughter to move out while they were at my sister's house celebrating. They hadn't called. They hadn't asked how we were doing. They hadn't offered to help us find a place. They'd just left a note and flown across the country, and they expected us to be gone by the time they got back. I pulled out my phone and opened my banking app. I'd been paying my parents $600 a month automatically on the first of every month, a transfer that came out of my account like clockwork, a small gesture of independence that made me feel like less of a burden. I canceled the automatic payment. Then I opened my messages and typed a text to my mother. I kept it short. I kept it calm. I got your note. I'll be out by the 28th. I've also canceled the rent payments effective immediately. You'll get nothing for December. Consider it compensation for the 6 days' notice. I didn't expect a response. I didn't get one. Over the next 4 days, I worked harder than I've ever worked in my life. I called in every favor I had. I reached out to old coworkers from the job I'd lost, former classmates from college, friends of friends who might know someone who might know someone. I put up desperate posts on social media, not sad posts, not woe is me posts, just practical posts. Does anyone know of any short-term rentals available immediately, or any rentals at all? Single mom with a 9-year-old daughter, clean, quiet tenants, can pay rent. On December 26th, I got a message from a friend of a friend, someone I'd met once at a birthday party 2 years ago. She'd seen my post and thought of me. Hey, I have a small house I'm renting out. The previous tenant just left unexpectedly. It needs some work paint mostly, and the kitchen is outdated, but it's livable. 2 bedrooms, small backyard, $800 a month, available immediately. I drove out to see it that afternoon. It was on the edge of town, in a neighborhood that was more working class than my parents' carefully manicured suburb. The house was small, maybe 800 square feet, with a chain-link fence around a patchy backyard and siding that needed to be pressure washed. Inside, the walls were painted a dingy beige that was peeling in places, and the kitchen had laminate countertops from the 1970s. But it had 2 bedrooms. It had a backyard where Grace could play. It had a front door that locked with keys that would be mine and mine alone. It was $800 a month less than I'd been paying my parents, and it was available now. I'll take it, I said. I signed the lease that night. On December 27th, Grace and I packed everything we owned. It wasn't much. 8 months of living in a basement apartment had forced us to downsize to essentials. We had clothes, books, Grace's toys, my freelance equipment, kitchen supplies, the small furniture I'd accumulated. A friend with a truck helped us move. It took 3 trips. We were done by 5 p.m. I cleaned the basement apartment thoroughly, not because they deserved it, but because I wanted to leave without giving them any ammunition. I left the keys on the counter. And I left a note of my own. We're out as requested, don't contact us. My parents came home on December 28th. They called me that evening. My mother's voice was tight, surprised, edged with something that might have been panic. Jessica, we're back, where are you? We moved out, I said, like you asked. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. But we needed to talk first, my mother said. About what? I asked. About the arrangement, about how this was going to work. You left me a note telling me to be out by the time you got back, I said. I'm out, what else is there to discuss? You didn't give us December's rent, my mother said. You gave me 6 days' notice on Christmas week, I said. You're lucky you got November's rent, I don't owe you anything. That's not how this works, my mother said, her voice rising now. You can't just decide not to pay. I can when you evict me with 6 days' notice while you're at Bella's house for Christmas, I said. My mother went quiet. We weren't evicting you, she said finally. We were asking you to find your own place. With 6 days' notice, I repeated, on Christmas. "We thought you'd need motivation," my mother said. I remember the way those words landed like a slap, like a physical blow that I could feel in my chest. "Motivation for what?" I asked. "You were getting too comfortable," my mother said. "We wanted you to focus on getting back on your feet." I closed my eyes. Our new house, was quiet around me. Grace was in her new bedroom unpacking her books, and I could hear her humming to herself through the thin walls. I thought about the 8 months we'd spent in that basement. I thought about the rent I'd paid, the dishes I'd washed, the careful way I'd tried not to be a burden. "I was getting back on my feet," I said. "I was paying you rent. I was taking care of Grace. I was looking for full-time work. What part of that looked like I wasn't focused?" "You were relying on us too much," my mother said. "I was living in your basement and paying rent," I said. "That's not relying on you. That's renting from you like any other tenant. But you didn't treat me like a tenant. You treated me like a burden you wanted gone." "That's not fair," my mother said. "What's not fair is leaving a note for your daughter and granddaughter on Christmas week telling them to move out while you're celebrating with Bella's family." My mother was quiet for a moment. Then she said, in a smaller voice than I'd ever heard from her, "Bella thought it would be good for you to be more independent." And there it was. Bella. Bella, who lived 3 states away. Bella, who'd never once called to ask how I was doing. Bella, who sent professional Christmas cards and hosted our parents for week-long celebrations and had opinions about my life without ever having lived it. "Bella doesn't even live in this state," I said. "How does she get a say in whether I can live in your basement?" "She's concerned about you," my mother said. "She thinks you're not pushing yourself hard enough." "Bella has never asked me how I'm doing," I said. "Not once since I moved in with you, but she has opinions about my life." "She's your sister," my mother said. "She cares." "If she cared, she would have called me," I said. "Instead, she convinced you to kick me out on Christmas." "We didn't kick you out," my mother said. "Yes," I said. "You did." I hung up the phone. My father called the next day. Different approach, gentler voice, the reasonable parent routine he'd perfected over 34 years of being married to my mother's intensity. "Jessica, your mother is upset," he said. "This wasn't supposed to go this way." "How was it supposed to go?" I asked. "We thought you'd come talk to us," he said. "We thought we'd sit down and work out a plan together." "You left a note," I said. "While you were gone, you didn't ask me to come talk. You told me to be out." My father sighed, a long, tired sound that I could picture exactly him sitting in his recliner in the living room, one hand rubbing his forehead the way he always did when he was frustrated. "The note was poorly worded," he said. "The note was clear," I said. "You wanted me out by the 28th. I'm out." "Where are you staying?" he asked. "I found a place," I said. "Can we see Grace?" he asked. "No," I said. My father went quiet. "Jessica, don't punish Grace because you're upset with us." "I'm not punishing Grace," I said. "I'm protecting her." "From what?" "From the message you just sent her," I said. "That her grandparents' love is conditional, that she's only welcome when it's convenient, that Christmas with Bella's family is more important than Christmas with her." "That's not what we meant," my father said. "That's what you did," I said. I hung up the phone. 3 weeks went by. I didn't hear from them. Grace asked about them once in that first week when the newness of our house hadn't yet settled into routine. "Why don't we see Grandma and Grandpa anymore?" she asked. We were eating dinner at our small kitchen table, the one I'd brought from the basement apartment, and she was pushing her pasta around her plate in a way that meant she wasn't really hungry. "Because they hurt us," I said, "and I'm making sure they can't do it again." "But I miss them," Grace said. "I know," I said. "But sometimes the people we love do things that aren't safe, and my job is to keep you safe, even from them." Grace nodded slowly, absorbing this. She was 9 years old. She understood more than I wanted her to. "Okay," she said. She went back to pushing her pasta around, and I went back to my dinner, and we didn't talk about it again. My mother sent a text in mid-January. "We'd like to see Grace. Maybe take her for ice cream." I didn't respond. She texted again the next day. "Jessica, please, she's our granddaughter." I replied this time. "She's my daughter, and you made it very clear she wasn't a priority. When you chose Christmas with Bella over us, you don't get to come back now because you miss her." My mother called. I didn't answer. She left a voicemail, long, defensive, starting with an apology and somehow transforming into accusations halfway through. I deleted it without finishing. It's been 7 months now. We're still in the small house on the edge of town. I got a full-time job in February, marketing coordinator for a nonprofit. Less money than my old job, but better benefits, and more importantly, stability. Grace has her own room now, with posters she picked out herself, a constellation chart on the ceiling that glows in the dark, a print of her favorite video game characters on the wall by her bed. We have a backyard. It's small, and the grass is patchy, but it's ours. She's made friends in the neighborhood, kids her age who ride bikes up and down the street and knock on our door to ask if she can come out and play. She's happy. My parents send cards occasionally. Birthday cards for Grace, an Easter card that arrived 2 weeks late, a generic thinking of you card with no personal message. I put them in a drawer in my bedside table. Grace doesn't ask about them anymore. Last month, my mother called from a number I didn't recognize. I answered before I realized who it was. Muscle memory, the habit of picking up when an unknown number calls because it might be a job opportunity or a freelance client. "Jessica," my mother's voice said. "What do you want?" I asked. "I want to apologize," she said. "For what specifically?" I asked. "For the note, for the timing, for not handling it better." "Not for kicking us out," I said. "We were trying to help you be independent," she said. "You were trying to get rid of us so Bella would stop complaining," I said. "That's not," my mother started. "Yes," I said, "it is. And until you can admit that, we don't have anything to talk about." I hung up the phone. Grace came into the room a few minutes later, her backpack over one shoulder, ready for me to walk her to the bus stop. "Was that Grandma?" she asked. "Yes," I said. What did she want? To apologize? Sort of. Grace thought about that. She's 10 now, older in the ways that matter. She's learned things this year that I wish she hadn't had to learn. "Do you think she's really sorry?" she asked. "I think she's sorry it didn't go the way she planned," I said, "but I don't think she's sorry for what she did." Grace nodded. She understood. "Then we don't need to see her," she said. "Right," I said. "Right." She went back to getting ready for school, and I stayed there for a moment, sitting on the edge of my bed, looking at the phone in my hand. I thought about the note on the counter. I thought about Christmas week and 6 days' notice and Bella's influence and the choice my parents made. And I thought about the small house with the backyard and the door that locks. I thought about Grace's room with the glow-in-the-dark stars. I thought about the job that pays enough and the life we built without them. And I realized I didn't miss them. Not the way I thought I would. Not the way you're supposed to miss family. The real revenge wasn't in the canceled rent payment or the terse note I left on the counter. The real revenge was in giving them exactly what they asked for and watching them realize too late that it wasn't what they wanted at all. My parents thought they were calling a bluff. They thought I would panic, would beg, would show up at Bella's perfect Christmas celebration with tears in my eyes, would plead for more time, would prove to everyone that I was exactly the burden they'd always known me to be. They expected me to fight for a place in their home. They didn't expect me to build a home without them. When my mother called that first evening, when she asked where we were and I said we'd moved out, the silence on the other end of the line was worth more than any satisfaction I'd felt in years. She wasn't prepared for that. She wasn't prepared for me to simply comply, to take her note at face value, to pack our things and leave and never look back. The rent cancellation was petty, sure. $600 wasn't going to bankrupt them, wasn't going to cause them any real hardship. But it made a point. It drew a line between being family and being tenants. If they wanted to treat me like a tenant who could be evicted with 6 days' notice, I would act like a tenant who owed them nothing beyond the terms of our arrangement. They'd given me notice. I'd vacated. End of transaction. But the real punishment, if that's what you want to call it, was in the absence. In the silence that stretched across weeks and months. In the birthday cards that arrived without personal messages, because they didn't know what to say to a daughter they'd tried to motivate and lost instead. In the phone calls that went unanswered, and the voicemails that were deleted, and the gradual realization, settling over them like dust, that they had made a choice, and that choice had consequences. My father's gentle approach didn't work because I'd already seen the note. My mother's apologies didn't work because they weren't for the thing that mattered. They were sorry about the timing, sorry about the method, sorry about how it looked. But they weren't sorry for choosing Bella's comfort over my stability. They weren't sorry for deciding that their daughter and granddaughter were acceptable casualties in their quest to appear successful. Bella got what she wanted, I assume. A Christmas without the embarrassing sister in the basement, a holiday focused entirely on her perfect family, a week of undivided attention from our parents. I hope it was worth it. I hope she knows what it cost. The revenge isn't dramatic. There's no scene where I show up wealthy and successful, no moment where they fall to their knees and beg for forgiveness. The revenge is quieter than that. The revenge is a small house on the edge of town with a backyard and a front door that locks. The revenge is a daughter who doesn't ask about her grandparents anymore because she's learned that love isn't always unconditional. The revenge is a life built without them, full and messy and imperfect, but ours. They wanted me to be independent. They got their wish. I've had 7 months to think about what happened. 7 months to replay every conversation, every silence, every moment leading up to that note on the counter. And I've come to a conclusion that surprises me a little, even now. I don't hate them. I don't even hate Bella, though I'll probably never speak to her again either. What I feel is something more like resignation. An acceptance that this is who they are, people who prioritize appearances over connections, who love conditionally, who can convince themselves that cruelty is actually kindness if they frame it the right way. My parents genuinely believed they were helping me. That's the most painful part, in a way. They convinced themselves that 6 days' notice on Christmas week was motivation, that excluding me from family celebrations was setting boundaries, that choosing my sister over me was just practical. They weren't trying to be villains. They were trying to be parents in the only way they knew how, by pushing me out of the nest without checking if I had wings. But here's the thing about nests. Sometimes when you push someone out, they don't come back. Sometimes they build their own nest, their own home, their own life, and they realize that the nest they left was never really theirs to begin with. Grace is doing well. She's adjusted to our new life with the resilience that children have, the ability to adapt and move forward in ways that adults sometimes can't. She doesn't talk about her grandparents, doesn't ask why we don't see them, doesn't seem to miss them the way I worried she would. Maybe she's already learned, at 10 years old, something it took me 34 years to figure out. Family isn't about blood. It's about who shows up, who stays, who chooses you over and over again, even when it's inconvenient. My parents had their chance to choose us. They chose Bella instead, and now they have to live with that choice. If this story resonated with you, if you've ever been the one left out of family celebrations, if you've ever been made to feel like a burden by the people who were supposed to support you, if you've ever had to build a life without people you thought would always be there, I want you to know that you're not alone. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is walk away. Sometimes the healthiest thing you can do is close the door. And sometimes the family you build is stronger than the family you were born into. If you're feeling generous, hit that like button and drop a comment telling me about a time you had to make a hard choice about family. Subscribe if you want more stories like this, stories about resilience and boundaries and the complicated, messy business of being human. I read every comment, and I'm grateful for every single one of you who takes the time to share your own experiences. Until next time, take care of yourselves and each other.